There are moments when life feels quietly blocked, not because nothing is happening, but because something inside keeps repeating patterns you cannot see clearly. You pray, you wait, you try to stay hopeful, yet the doors you expected remain still. And in that silence, it begins to feel like heaven is far. But what if the silence is not absence? What if it is awareness being revealed? Because sometimes what holds back blessings is not lack of prayer, but unnoticed habits that shape the heart in ways that resist what God is gently trying to release. And as this unfolds, it may feel less like correction and more like a mirror placed in front of your spirit. These are the 7 habits that could be quietly blocking your blessings. And as each one is revealed, you may begin to recognize familiar places within your own thoughts, your own waiting, your own emotional exhaustion. 1. Carrying silent bitterness. There is a weight that does not always announce itself. It stays hidden behind smiles and normal conversations. Bitterness from disappointment, unanswered prayers, or how life turned out differently than expected. It can quietly close the heart without you noticing. And whenever you stand praying, forgive. Mark 11:25. Forgiveness here is not about excusing pain. It is about releasing what keeps your spirit stuck in yesterday. Because when the heart holds on to what hurt it, it becomes difficult to receive what is new. You begin to notice prayers feel heavy. Joy feels distant. Not because God has moved away, but because the heart is still holding what He asked you to release. 2. Overthinking every step. The mind can become a place of constant noise, analyzing decisions, replaying outcomes, fearing mistakes that have not even happened. There is a quiet exhaustion that comes with trying to predict everything. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. Sometimes clarity does not come through more thinking, but through deeper surrender. And in that surrender, peace slowly returns where confusion once ruled. You may begin to realize that not every door requires perfect understanding before you move. Some doors open as you walk in faith. 3. Delaying obedience. There are moments when something within you already knows what is right, but timing becomes an excuse, fear becomes a delay, uncertainty becomes hesitation, and delay can slowly dull sensitivity. If you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. Isaiah 1:19. Obedience is not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it is simply responding when your heart is stirred. And when that response is delayed too often, direction becomes cloudy. It may not feel like rebellion, just postponement. But even small delays can stretch seasons longer than necessary. 4. Spiritual neglect in quiet seasons. There are times when life feels stable or emotionally heavy, and spiritual connection slowly fades into the background. Not intentionally, just gradually. Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. James 4:8. Distance does not always begin with walking away. Sometimes it begins with drifting attention. And in that drift, the heart becomes louder than the spirit. Emotions speak more than peace, and clarity begins to feel far away. You may begin to sense dryness, not because God is absent, but because connection has been unintentionally neglected. 5. Speaking doubt over your own life. Words carry weight, even the ones whispered inwardly. I am not sure anything will change. Maybe things are just stuck forever. These thoughts can slowly shape expectation. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Proverbs 18:21. There is a moment where you begin to realize that what you repeatedly say inwardly becomes the atmosphere you live inside. Even in waiting, even in frustration, life responds to what is consistently spoken over it. 6. Comparing your journey to others. Comparison can quietly steal gratitude without permission. It shows up when someone else's progress feels like a reminder of your delay, when someone else's answered prayer feels like your silence. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works. Ephesians 2:10. Your path is not delayed because it is defective. It is shaped differently because it is meant differently. And sometimes peace returns the moment you stop measuring your timeline against another person's visible moment. You may begin to see that what looks like delay is often just a different design. 7. Holding control instead of trust. There is a deep inner tension that comes from trying to hold everything together. Outcomes, timing, people, decisions, even outcomes that belong beyond human reach. And yet control often feels like safety until it becomes exhaustion. Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. 1 Peter 5:7. Control can quietly replace trust without announcement. But somewhere in surrender, something soft begins to return. Peace that does not depend on certainty. You begin to realize that not everything was meant to be carried alone. What you release in your hands, God is able to rebuild in His time. There is a kind of exhaustion that does not come from doing too much, but from holding too much internally. And in that place, God is not distant. He is often closest in awareness. Even when life feels paused, something unseen is being realigned. Even when prayers feel unanswered, something within is being refined. The delay you feel is not always denial. Sometimes it is preparation you cannot yet see. And in that realization, the heart begins to soften again. Not everything blocking blessings is external. Some of it lives in unnoticed habits, thoughts, emotional patterns, quiet agreements made with fear. But nothing about this awareness is meant to condemn. It is meant to awaken. Because even in seasons of confusion, God is not far from the one who is searching, questioning, waiting, and still hoping. And slowly, without pressure, the heart begins to return to trust again. Not because everything changed, but because understanding finally did.